think we're up and running.
Hello, everybody. This is Colleen Condon. I'm chair of the Charleston County Democrats, and today we're starting a series with our exciting round of candidates that we have over the next 2 months before the primary that is probably still June 9th. So we'll be doing these daily with the candidates so you can get to know them better. You'll be able to follow along on Facebook Live and ask questions. Today, I'm here with our first candidate, Rob Wehrman, who's running for county council. Rob, introduce yourself.
Hey, y'all. I'm Rob Wehrman. I am running for county council here in District 3. Just to tell you a little bit about our campaign, I'm running because I think it's time for the county government to step up and take action to protect working families in Charleston County. I think even before this coronavirus outbreak, we were facing some very major issues in the form of gridlock traffic, in the form of increased flooding, and a shortage of quality, affordable housing options. Now obviously we're also facing a global pandemic and a very serious economic downturn. And so really now more than ever, I think we need leadership that's willing to take bold action and willing to show a vision for how we're going to get through this in a way that makes sure that everyone in our county and as our part of our community has an opportunity to live and thrive. Colleen, I'm a public defender, so I see on a daily basis how these issues affect low-income folks in the most vulnerable parts of our community. But I think these are issues that really affect everyone. I mean, certainly there are nurses and teachers and restaurant workers who can't afford to live close to where they work, who are burdened on a daily basis by heavy traffic and long commutes. And then, of course, flooding is an issue that really raises questions about the future of our city, long-term for everyone. So these are huge challenges, and I'll just tell you that I think the key to solving them, and really the key to my campaign, is recognizing that the strength and the foundation of our community lies in working class, middle class families. And we need to make it a priority to make sure that everyday people can find work, can find a place to live, and really can raise a family. And I know that if we do that, we're going to have a community that's more economically productive, that's enjoying a higher standard of living, and frankly, one that's fairer and more just. So, we can get into the details of how I'd want to do that and why I'd want to do that. But that's sort of the core of what we're trying to do here in District 3 and countywide.
Wonderful. Well, let's get a couple of things on the record first. So County Council District 3 is where?
So County Council District 3 runs, it includes parts of North Charleston, parts of downtown, and parts of Mount Pleasant. Mostly North Charleston and Mount Pleasant. So it would start in sort of the Deer Park area, run down one side of 26 over to Remount Road, and what we call Charleston Farms, we call obviously the Park Circle area. Then it covers mostly marshland and warehouses for a while, into sort of the Ansonboro neighborhood of downtown. Then sort of across the Cooper River to Patriots Point, to Shim Creek, and sort of up to 17, including Sneed Farm, and finally out to Brickyard. So it's a big mix of areas, and it's a long district, but I think it's a district that, like I said, I think there's a lot that unites us, and I think that there are certainly many reasons that we can come together on a lot of issues to change Charleston County for the better.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. Now, do you have primary opponents and general opponents?
I do. There was, I believe, one Republican who filed, so certainly this will be contested in the general, but there's also a primary coming up, as you said, June 9th, as far as we know. And there's a primary, there's 3 other candidates beyond myself. Obviously, I think I'm the best man for the job. Would ask everyone if they're interested to come and support me. We've got my website up, and I think you can look on there. You can certainly email me at rob@robforcharlestoncounty.com if you'd like to get involved. But most of all, I'd appreciate anyone getting out there on the polls or hopefully being able to mail in or do something if that comes to it, but certainly being able to support me in the primary come here in June 9th, if that stays the date.
Well, we hope that there will be a way to do an automatic mail-in ballot or something that makes it easier for people to vote safely. Certainly, those are the options that I know are being explored at this point and we're advocating for. Certainly, if people want to go ahead and be sure now, they can submit an application ballot now, an application ballot today, indicating health reasons and to prepare for June 9th is what Joe Debney has shared with me, our election
That's
commission director. So certainly we want to make sure everybody knows, go ahead and put June 9th on your calendar. It may get moved or adjusted somehow, but we do want people to be able to participate in that primary. Now, you mentioned you're a public defender. Which office do you work with?
I work for the County of Charleston, so the Charleston County Public Defender's Office, which is part of the Ninth Circuit. So I work for Ashley Pennington, and I've been there for a few years now. Before that, I worked in the federal court system with Judge Norton. And before that, I was at a firm up in New York for a brief period of time in a former life before I really kind of focused in on public service. I used to do corporate real estate transactions of all things. So.
Oh, wow. So what brought you to...
I'm sorry, Colleen, you broke up a little bit there.
Sorry about that. What brought you to Charleston?
Well, I grew up in South Carolina, and like I said, I really only left just to go to law school there. I went to Columbia up in New York, and again, got a job up there right out of law school. But you know, wanted to come home, wanted to raise a family in a more tight-knit community, kind of place where you know your neighbors and wave at folks on the street and all that sort of thing that sounds a little cheesy, but actually means something to me. And again, I had kind of realized that I really wanted to be in public service. I mean, I went to law school to help people with that sort of idea, like a lot of lawyers do. And looked at myself one day and realized that I thought I could be doing more to do that. And had the opportunity to come down here first to work in the federal court system. And I've been doing that ever since.
So do you have pets, Rob?
I might have my wife claim them. We have 2 cats, but yeah, we've got two characters of cats, but they're fun nonetheless.
Are they totally confused by you being around all the time?
They're mostly, well, one seems to like me and one seems to generally be afraid of everything. I mean, mostly they're terrified of my son, who's a little over 1 year old and has kind of just discovered them. And they're kind of longing for the days when he didn't realize that they were quite around, because you see them running from one room, you can bet he's probably in the other. So.
Well, that's probably great, though, getting to spend time with your wife and your young child.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know that, you know, everyone's kind of having to adjust to, you know, social distancing. That's one of the positives, but certainly I think it's become a huge burden to a lot of folks. And it's a scary time. I mean, there are a lot of businesses that are not able to survive in this kind of climate, or that are able to survive and are only able to do so by, you know, shedding workers and laying people off or furloughing folks. You know, we did see the federal government step in. Frankly, I'll just tell you, on the county level, I think the county could be doing similar things as far as small business loans. You've seen local governments doing this in a lot of places, some much bigger cities, but even Aiken here in South Carolina has created sort of a revolving loan fund for small businesses. I think they committed about $1 million to that. So, you know, I think there are things that we can be doing at the local level that I'd like to see step up. And, you know, I'm certainly hoping that the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic, I should say, is over in a sooner rather than later type fashion. But, you know, there's a real risk that this thing lingers and that we might have to undergo rounds of social distancing, or at least be on top of testing if it comes back around. So, I think it is important that we focus on, well, what can we do as a local government to kind of have all hands on deck, with federal, state, and local, to really both guide ourselves through the pandemic, but also through the aftermath.
Maybe the health department might be able to be a resource for folks
I think the
as
health
this is
department
going
could.
forward.
I think the health department could be a resource, and certainly there's, I believe, at least one line in the county budget that goes to the health department, and that might be a line that needs to get certainly expanded. Just to get through this, but also just to be prepared. Resilience is I think a word that we're all learning a lot more about in the last few weeks, and I think it's something that takes a lot of different things, but certainly the health department would be a part of that.
Now, County Council, I saw, is doing some online meetings. Did you have a chance to observe last week?
I was not able to observe last week, no, but I will certainly be checking out the archives and checking in on the online meetings. It's generally how I watch the meetings anyways. So.
Well, I was glad to see that they're doing online meetings, because it's a little frightening to me that we don't have that in place yet for the state legislature or for Congress. But I'm glad to see our local government is being responsible and allowing the business of the governments to go forward.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned flooding. So what do you think the county could be doing better as far as flooding?
Well, I think the county did recently add a resilience element to sort of the long-term plan, which is sort of basically a policy guideline that sort of informs planning and code decisions. I think that's a great step. I think that certainly that is an element that needs to be highlighted. I mean, it can only really be enforced by the county council itself when, potential variances or something like that comes up through the zoning department. I think that there is the Greenbelt program, which also sort of has an element of flood mitigation in it. And I think that might need to be sort of a turn in focus on policy. And certainly, you look at a lot of the projects being done by the city of Charleston at the city level. They identified a long number of projects and got some funding, but they weren't able to take on all of those projects that they'd identified. And I think that, the county might look at stepping in and seeing if they can find a source of funding to look at those projects, or even projects outside of the city of Charleston, in Mount Pleasant or in North Charleston, to do that. I mean, at the very least, we need to certainly maintain the current stormwater infrastructure. And I think we need to do what we can to promote more green infrastructure moving forward through building codes, through zoning, and through really working with the local governments on the municipal level to coordinate their zoning and code enforcement as well.
After all, there are a lot of neighborhoods that have donut holes throughout North Charleston and northern parts of Charleston County. When I represented West Ashley, I found that a ditch doesn't know that it goes through the city of Charleston and then the county and then the city again. So you're right, working together and being able to address those in a systematic fashion would be really helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think a big part of county leadership is going to have to be coordinating, because so many of these issues are not something that can be solved by one person or even one government acting alone. And that's kind of that's part of what we need to do, is to be able to work with other folks and to be able to work with other governments, like the cities, like the state, and like the federal government. But also you need to jump in and you need to be active. So I think that more county participation on some of these issues is a key part of leadership. But also it's a key part of leadership is being able to coordinate. So, I think that's the goal that we would put forward for moving, both from sort of a lobbying perspective and just sort of a coordination perspective on enforcement.
Now, resilience is a new term that wasn't in place when I was on county council. What actually does resilience include?
So resilience is sort of, I guess, generally defined as a community's ability to either survive or adapt or succeed in the face of either sort of a one-time crisis or or maybe an ongoing challenge, which would be a better characterization of the flooding issue, certainly. Um, there's some interesting resources about resilience out there. I've been reading a bit about a group called the the City Resilience Catalyst, I believe is their name. Um, you know, it's a very broad concept, but I think that is a reflection of the reality that, big issues cannot be tackled by a silver bullet, that we need to tackle things from multiple angles. So, you know, you take one example would maybe be affordable housing. Um, so due to growth, due to changes in the housing market, we're in the middle of really a housing crisis. Housing prices have certainly risen in a way that's outpaced income. But if you can get a handle on that, well, you're going to be able to stabilize folks. You're going to be able to have folks being able to spend less of their money on rent checks and mortgage checks and more of their money in the economy. So that can be one piece of the puzzle. But of course, economic resilience, also, you're going to have to be able to help that business community, like we were talking about with the small business loans being a possibility. And frankly, one thing that people talk about when talking about resilience is really just the connectedness of a community. So, talking about building more walkability in our infrastructure, more investment in our public spaces, and more investment in just neighborhood connections, community organizing, that sort of thing. That is all stuff that can kind of go to be building a resilient community. And it's really about being able to take strengths from multiple areas and combine them to be able to adapt and survive when faced with, frankly, unpredictable challenges.
And affordable housing with your district, including even parts of Mount Pleasant, certainly that's part of the area we see the most suffering from affordable housing related crises.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an issue that affects a lot of different people in different ways. I mean, when we're talking about affordable housing, we're not just talking about public housing. We're talking about, like I said, maybe even young families or middle class income folks who
teachers, firefighters.
Yeah, exactly. Who are not able to purchase or rent in an area that they really should be if we were, looking at this on a reasonable basis. And so I think it's an issue that's going to require government intervention. I think that, there was a study done that concluded last year that said that, look, we're going to need a reliable funding source over a long-term period to commit funds to either building or lending to or acquiring land for affordable housing. So that would be, price restricted housing. But at the same time, I'll tell you that the Chamber of Commerce was also part of that study. And they identified, they advocated for that as well. But they also identified the fact that, should I say this, zoning and code enforcement and permitting are also major hurdles to creating affordable housing, really sort of in those other price points that might not be something that you would be restricting, that would be part of the free market, but it's not a price point that, the private developers or builders or whomever can really meet right now under the current regulatory scheme. So, it's not a one-pronged approach, and we're not just talking about one group of people or another. We're talking about a lot of people who are affected by this and a lot of different changes that we're going to have to look at making to really solve it.
And I think it definitely affects the entire length of your district, because while we're seeing some more immediate pressure in Mount Pleasant and in the parts of East Cooper that aren't part of the town of Mount Pleasant, it absolutely is being duplicated on a later level, I think, in Lincoln. Is it Lincolnville? You said you go up to Deer
It's
Park.
more Deer Park. Yeah.
Deer Park. Okay. Park Circle and Deer Park. I mean, that North Charleston area doesn't have as tight a zoning as exists currently in Mount Pleasant.
Sure.
So hopefully the county and the city of North Charleston can work together to do some overlay districts to really make sure things make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great. What else? What else would you like to share with us about your race?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest takeaway is that we're really trying to shift the perspective on county government to say, look, these are big issues, and they might not be the issues that you would think that the county government could step in and solve. And like I said, maybe it's not a one person coming in and changing everything automatically with a silver bullet type thing, but there's really no reason for the county government, which has a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars every year, to be sitting on the sidelines with these sort of major crises that are affecting us on a day-to-day basis. And I think there's more that the county can do, and I think it's time to expect more from the county. And I think, we can do that if we all come together and make it our priority to do so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing some thoughts with the Charleston Democrats. Will you remind everybody the best ways to reach you?
Sure. You can certainly send me an email, rob@robforcharlestoncounty.com. Ford is spelled out FOR, just in case. You can call me on my cell phone. That's 843-806-9070. Hopefully you can certainly contact us via our Facebook, which is connected here, and we'll be posting this out. That's also Rob for Charleston County on Facebook. So, would hope to see folks signing up, and would love to be talking to folks, and, certainly would ask for everyone's support come June 9th at the primary polls.
Terrific, Rob. Thank you. We'll look forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks, Colleen. Bye all.